I still remember the night it all started. It was late, close to midnight, when I checked into that small roadside motel. I'd been driving for hours, exhausted, desperate for a bed and a moment of silence. The woman at the front desk barely looked up when I walked in. She slid the room key across the counter and said, with a tone far too casual, "Just avoid room 19. I paused, waiting for her to explain. Maybe it was a joke, maybe she was tired. But she simply turned back to her computer screen as if the conversation was over. There was something unsettling about how calmly she said it. No explanation, no warning, just avoid it. As I walked down the dim hallway toward my room, I noticed that all the doors were identical except for room 19. The numbers on every door were gold. Room 19's number was black, old, scratched, almost carved into the wood. And the strangest part was that the door looked used, like people touched the handle often, too often. My room was right next door. Room 18. I told myself it was nothing. It had been a long day, and when you're tired, your mind exaggerates things. I took a shower, lay down on the bed, and finally started to relax. That's when I heard it, a soft knock. Not on my door, but on the door of room 19. I froze. 3 slow knocks. And then silence. I waited for someone to answer, but no one did. I pressed my ear to the wall, listening. Nothing, just the hum of the air conditioner. I tried to sleep, but around 2 a.m., I heard it again. This time the knocks were faster, almost urgent. Still no one opened. No one responded. No footsteps. Nothing. I finally drifted off around 4 a.m., telling myself it was probably someone drunk or lost. In the morning, I went to the front desk and casually asked the woman, "So, what's the story with room 19? She didn't smile. Didn't joke, didn't even blink. "Someone checked into that room last night," she said quietly. "But they checked out before you woke up." I nodded, but something didn't feel right. No footsteps. No voices. No sounds of packing. Nothing. Then she added, "But if you ever see the man who stays there, don't talk to him. Don't open your door. And whatever happens, don't let him in." Her voice cracked a little as she said it. Like she wasn't repeating some motel rumor, but something she had lived. At that moment, I felt a strange chill move down my spine, because she described it like the man wasn't a guest, but a threat. I walked out of the lobby slowly, thinking about what she said. Her words repeated in my mind all morning. If you ever see the man from room 19, don't let him in. I didn't know it yet, but that advice would soon become the most important warning of my life. Because later that night, he knocked on my door. That second night felt heavier somehow. The air was still, the hallway too quiet, the kind of silence that makes you feel watched even when you know you're alone. I kept trying to convince myself that the woman at the front desk was exaggerating. Maybe she liked spooking guests. Motels often had local myths, right? A little mystery to make the place feel interesting. But around 1:40 a.m. I learned how wrong I was. It started with footsteps. Slow, dragging, uneven, not the kind of steps people take when they're heading somewhere. More like the wandering of someone who doesn't know where they were going or doesn't care. I sat up in my bed listening carefully. They stopped right outside my door. My heartbeat doubled. I didn't move. Then came the knock. Not the polite knock you expect from a neighbor. Not the impatient banging from someone angry. This was different, soft, almost thoughtful. A rhythmic tapping like the person already knew I was awake and listening. Tap, tap, tap. Tap. The same pattern I heard the night before. Coming from room 19, I stayed silent, hoping he would go away. But he didn't. Instead, the man spoke, and his voice didn't sound right. "Is someone there?" he whispered. But it wasn't just a whisper. It was breathy, shaky, like he was forcing the words out through pain or exhaustion. It sounded like someone who hadn't spoken to another person in a long time. I need help," he said softly. "Please." My instincts screamed at me not to answer. My hand hovered over the doorknob, but something inside me held it back. Because there was something off, deeply off about his tone. People who need help don't usually whisper like they're afraid of being overheard. People in danger don't knock with rehearsed patterns. And then, through the bottom of the door, I saw his shadow. He was standing completely still, too still. But the shape, It wasn't right. The shadow looked tall and thin, unusually thin, like someone who'd lost too much weight too fast. And his posture was stiff, almost unnatural. I stepped back from the door. He must have heard it, because he whispered again. But this time with a different tone, "You can open the door now. Not please open the door. Not help me. Just, you can open the door now." As if he was giving me permission. As if he expected me to obey. A cold wave went through my body. Every instinct told me to stay silent. For almost a minute, he didn't move. Just stood there, waiting, then slowly, painfully slowly his shadow shifted. He bent down, his face lowering toward the crack under the door. I held my breath. I don't know why, maybe pure fear, but I didn't move even when I saw it. One pale, trembling eye staring through the gap directly at me. I froze completely. His breathing grew louder, harsher, more desperate. "I know you're awake," he whispered. "You checked in yesterday, room 18. My stomach dropped. How did he know that? I stepped backward, my hand shaking uncontrollably, reaching for my phone. But before I could dial anything, I heard it. Another door opening somewhere down the hall. The man in front of my room straightened instantly. His shadow snapped upright, as if the sound dragged him back into position. Then, without a word, he walked away. Not fast, not slow. Just walked like he was going somewhere familiar. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. When the sun finally rose, I opened my door, half expecting to see something left behind. A footprint, a note, something. But the hallway was spotless. Too spotless. I went straight to the front desk and told the woman what happened. Her face went white. "You didn't open the door, did you?" she asked. "No," I said. She let out a breath of relief. Good, because the last person who didn't check out. And we never saw him again. I stared at her, waiting for an explanation, but she looked like she already said too much. "What's in room 19? I finally asked. She hesitated. Then she whispered, "That's not the question you should be asking." I narrowed my eyes. What question should I ask then? She looked directly at me for the first time, and her voice trembled as she said, "You should ask who keeps checking into that room, even though he died 3 years ago." Her words echoed in my mind long after she said them. He died 3 years ago. People say strange things in small towns, but the fear in her voice wasn't something you can fake. She looked like someone who had seen something she wished she could forget. I leaned closer to the counter. "What do you mean he died? I saw him. He was right outside my door." She swallowed hard. "I know what you think you saw, but that man isn't alive." "Not anymore." I shook my head. "You can't expect me to believe that. Who is he?" She hesitated, then said quietly, "His name was Daniel Hale. He stayed here once." Room 19. Her eyes drifted to the hallway behind me, like she expected to see something standing there. "It was early winter," she continued. "He checked in just before a snowstorm. Alone. No luggage except a small black bag. The next morning, we found the bag in the hallway. But Daniel, Daniel was gone. Gone. No explanation, no body, no tracks in the snow. Police assumed he walked into the woods behind the motel, she said. But the strange part? Someone kept knocking on his door for days after he disappeared. I felt a cold pressure in my chest. The same knocking I heard? She nodded. But it wasn't until a week later that one of the officers told us the truth. She leaned in and lowered her voice. Daniel never made it to the motel. His car was found overturned 12 miles from here, frozen. He died at the scene. My mouth went dry. So if he never made it here, I whispered. Then who, she answered, checked into room 19? A heavy silence settled between us. I didn't believe in ghosts. Never have. But something was wrong, deeply wrong. And yet, deep inside, something didn't add up. Not the woman's story, not my experience. Not the man's voice at my door. Because his whispers didn't sound supernatural. They sounded human, broken, desperate. As if the danger wasn't something paranormal, but something far more real. I stepped outside to clear my mind, breathing in the cold morning air. The motel was surrounded by endless fields, a few trees, and a long stretch of road cutting the landscape like a scar. It felt isolated, too isolated, the perfect place for secrets. As I walked along the building, something caught my attention. Room 19's door, the black number, the scratched wood, the old metal handle. Something about it felt wrong. Like the door had been replaced, and poorly. I ran my fingers along the edge of the frame and felt splinters. Fresh ones. The door looked old, but the frame was newly installed. I spent the rest of the afternoon sitting in my room, staring at the wall between me and room 19. Every sound made me tense. Every footstep in the hallway made me hold my breath. I kept replaying the maintenance man's last words. Whatever you heard last night, that wasn't Daniel. I wanted to leave. Every instinct told me to grab my things, get in my car, and drive until the motel was nothing but a fading dot in the rearview mirror. But something stronger than fear kept me there. Curiosity, or maybe stubbornness. Or maybe the feeling that if I didn't face whatever this was, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. Around 6 p.m., I went to the front desk again. The woman was gone. A replacement sat in her chair, a young man, probably in his early 20s, scrolling on his phone. He looked relaxed. Too relaxed for a place like this. Hey, I said. Where's the woman who works mornings? He didn't look up. Left early. Said she wasn't feeling well. I hesitated. Do you know anything about room 19? His fingers stopped scrolling. Slowly, he raised his eyes to mine, and for the first time, I didn't see boredom. I saw fear. Look, man, he whispered, leaning forward. We're not supposed to talk about it. Management thinks sharing details will create panic, whatever that means. Has something happened before? I asked. He swallowed hard. You could say that. People complain about knocking, voices, shadows under the door. But when we check, there's nobody there. But someone was there, I insisted. I saw him. The desk clerk nodded slowly. We've heard that before too. Guests say a man stands outside their door late at night. Tall, thin, pale. Like he's waiting for someone specific. Daniel? I asked. No, the clerk said immediately. We don't know who he is. But he isn't the same person every guest describes. I blinked. What do you mean? He looked over his shoulder to make sure no one was nearby. Some people say he's young. Some say he's old. Some say he looks sick. Others say he looks angry. But they all describe the same thing. His voice dropped to a whisper. He knocks exactly the same way. A cold wave rolled through my body. The pattern, that slow, controlled tapping, it haunted my memory. Is there any footage? I asked. Security cameras? The clerk shook his head. They installed cameras twice. Both times they malfunctioned after a week. The last technician quit mid-repair. Said he didn't want to come back. How many people have disappeared? I asked. He hesitated. Too long. 3, he finally whispered. But there might be more. Some guests never checked out, never called, never paid with credit cards. Just vanished. I rubbed my face trying to process it. Why is the motel still open? He shrugged. People don't ask questions. Cheaper to ignore it than shut the place down. Before I could respond, the lights above us flickered. Once. Twice. Then they stabilized. The clerk exhaled. That happens every time someone stays in room 19, he said quietly. Faulty wiring, they say. But it only happens when that room is occupied. Is it occupied now? I asked. His expression froze. Yes, he nodded slowly. A man checked in today. Paid cash, no ID. My stomach dropped. What did he look like? The clerk lowered his voice. He looked wrong. Like he wasn't fully awake. Pale. Thin. Eyes like he hadn't slept in weeks. My heart started racing. Because that description wasn't similar to the man outside my door, it was exactly him. And if he checked in today, then who was knocking on my door last night? I backed away from the counter, feeling sick. My breathing wouldn't steady. Nothing made sense. Look, the clerk said, standing up slightly. Whatever you do, don't go near that room after dark. Don't talk to him. Don't open your door. I nodded, but I wasn't sure if I could trust myself. My thoughts were racing, tangled, panicked. When I returned to my room, the sun was setting. The sky was fading into orange and purple. And in the hallway, shadows were growing longer. I locked my door, then bolted it. Then pushed the chair under the handle. For the next few hours, I sat on the edge of the bed, listening, waiting, thinking. At 11:57 p.m., I heard something that made my blood run cold. A soft click. The door to room 19 opening. Then closing. Followed by slow, deliberate footsteps moving down the hall toward my room. The footsteps stopped right outside my door. Not in front of the room next to me, not halfway down the hallway, right in front of my door. My chest tightened, and I held my breath without even realizing it. And then I heard it, a knock. Tap, 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 that same rhythm. That cold, calculated pattern felt less like knocking and more like a signal, almost like a code. My entire body froze. I didn't speak. I didn't move. After a few seconds, another knock came. Softer, more patient, as if whoever was standing there knew I was listening. I reached for my phone. No signal, not even a single bar. It felt like a scene from a horror movie, but it wasn't. It felt deliberate, as if someone wanted me isolated. The person behind the door didn't make a sound. They didn't shake the handle or try to force their way in. They just waited. After what felt like minutes but was probably only 30 seconds, the knocking stopped. I exhaled shakily. Then I heard something new. A whisper so soft I wasn't even sure it was real. "Let me in," it said. Every hair on my arm stood up. It didn't sound threatening or angry. It sounded tired, broken, like someone stranded on the edge of something unimaginable. I pressed my back against the wall and whispered, "Daniel?" Silence. Then, faintly, "Not Daniel." I clenched my teeth. "Who are you?" I asked. There was a pause, long enough to make me think they had walked away. And then came the words that made my blood freeze. "You were with me before." My stomach twisted. "What do you mean before?" "I've never met you." Another pause. Then 5 words that chilled me completely. "You don't remember the accident." My heart dropped. "What accident?" I whispered. But the voice didn't answer. All I could hear were slow footsteps walking away. I stayed still for a long time, maybe 10 minutes, maybe longer, trying to process what had just happened. Something inside me suddenly shifted. Maybe it was fear, maybe instinct, but I finally stood up, moved the chair away from the door, and unlocked it. I opened it just a little, just enough to see into the hallway. It was completely empty. Completely silent. But the door to room 19 was standing wide open, and inside it a faint, flickering light was glowing. I knew I shouldn't go in there. Every logical part of my mind was telling me not to. But something deeper, something I couldn't explain, pushed me forward. I stepped inside the room. The air smelled like dust and cold, as if no one had stayed there in a very long time. The bed was untouched, but the wall above the headboard had writing carved into the paint. The letters were large, rough, uneven, as if scratched in with shaking hands. It said, "You survived." My pulse started pounding as I stepped closer. And below that line there was another message carved into the wall. "But you left me there." In that moment, memories I didn't realize I had buried started flooding back. I saw a car. I saw darkness, rain, headlights, the violent impact of a crash. I heard glass exploding, metal twisting, and through all of it a voice screaming beside me, "Help me, I'm stuck. Don't leave me." Someone had been in the car with me. Someone I didn't save. Someone I left behind while I crawled out. Someone who died while I survived. My vision blurred and my hands began to shake, and then I heard breathing behind me. Slow, rough, and incredibly close. I turned around, and for the first time I saw him clearly. He didn't look like a stranger at all. He looked like a man whose face had been distorted by fear, pain, and those final desperate moments before death. "Now you remember," he whispered. I stumbled backward, shaking my head. I didn't know it was you. I didn't remember." My voice broke. He stepped closer, but his expression wasn't angry. It wasn't threatening. It was almost sad. "That's why I knocked," he said quietly. "I needed you to remember. I needed you to look at me. Just one last time." His face flickered for a moment, almost like static on a screen. The edges of his body began to fade. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said softly. "I just didn't want to be forgotten." And with those final words, he slowly dissolved into the air, like smoke disappearing or a shadow fading as the light reaches it. The room became still again, empty, completely silent. I stood there, finally remembering everything, maybe for the first time in my life. I left the motel before the sun came up. I didn't check out. I didn't look back. Since that day, I've tried to live with my past, with the guilt, with the truth, with the memory of that night. But sometimes late at night, when everything is quiet and the world feels still, I can still hear that knocking in my mind, that same rhythm, repeating again and again, tap, 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 like someone, somewhere is still waiting for me to open the door.